Hello everyone, my name is Leo, and if you follow our community you know that we have done several videos about latency. For instance, one video comparing 23 amp modelers, one dedicated to the camper player, etc. This new video is fully focused on the Ampero 2 and Ampero stage latency management. This is not the first time we check out the Ampero 2 family latency. And I think I have some pretty good news for you. Let's start. First of all, if you want more info about latency and how I have measured it, you can check out my 23 amp modeling pedalboard latency comparison video, following the link in the card above or description below. With this out of the way, let's jump straight to the results. With an empty chain, I mean no effect blocks in the chain, we have 3 milliseconds of latency, the same as with the previous firmware version. We have the same latency as the previous firmware with 3.1 milliseconds, also with an amp only in the chain. If we put a cab in the chain without any amp, we have 3.2 milliseconds. And here we have a pretty big improvement, as with the previous firmware we had 7.7 milliseconds. And this is a good news. With an amp and a cab activated in the chain together, we have 3.3 milliseconds. And obviously also here we have a big improvement, as with the previous firmware we had 7.8 milliseconds. So more than 4 milliseconds of improvement, which is a very good news. If we add a tube screamer, the latency increases just a tiny bit at 3.5 milliseconds. If we add a reverb, the latency does not increase, as it does not increase even if we add a delay. On the other hand, with a delay and a reverb together in the chain at the same time, we have around 4.95 milliseconds of latency. So this is kind of strange, as with delay or reverb alone, the latency does not increase, where if we add both the effects, we reach around 5 milliseconds, which is odd in my opinion. If we activate the loop, obviously patching the send and return ports with a jack, we have 6.5 milliseconds, which is to be expected as we add an ADA conversion round trip to our signal chain. And now let's talk about the tone catch blocks, which I am very curious about. With just one tone catch in the chain, we have 3.1 milliseconds, so the same performance as the regular amp block. On the other hand, with two tone catches in the chain, one of an amp and one of a pedal, we reach 5 milliseconds. And this is quite strange. I mean, we have a similar behavior as with the reverb together with the delay in the chain, where the effect, the single effect alone, do not increase too much the latency, but the latency increases when we use both together. Maybe this is an area where there could be some improvements. So, summarizing, the latency is good and it has improved a lot, especially with the cabinet in the chain, which is a nice news and something we should all be proud, as the previous cab performance latency was something highlighted by our community. Now the latency is in line with the other units like the camper, the quad cortex, etc., even if not as good as the one of the NAM player or Boss or NUX unit, which are around 1 milliseconds of latency. The only things that can be improved, in my opinion, are the latency values with both a delay and a reverb in the chain, or with two tone catches. I mean, don't get me wrong, the latency is good with a delay and a reverb or two tone catches at 5 milliseconds, but here we have a strange behavior, as with one single tone catch the latency increases just by around 0.1 milliseconds, and if we add a single delay or a single reverb, the latency does not increase. So that's all for this video. I have to say that I'm pretty happy with these results, as they show that gear builders are listening to our advices, are listening to our community, which is a great thing and something we should all be proud.